Bloodborne PSX is a demake of Bloodborne made in the style of a PlayStation 1 game. In case you're not familiar with Bloodborne, I don't know where you've been because this is the greatest video game ever created. At least that's what they tell me. I haven't gotten very far in it yet, but I did make this really funny custom character. I don't know how they did it, but in this gritty, dark, aggressively depressing game, they made a character creator that's funnier than every Saints Row game combined. It also trends on Twitter every 2 days for absolutely no reason at all, so if you're ever on Twitter, you've definitely heard of this game. Not an exaggeration, by the way, it's literally trending right now while I'm writing this. Even though I haven't beaten this game yet, I took the Dark Souls pill shortly after beating Elden Ring, so now I am going through every single game in the series. I don't know how they did it, but these games cast a spell on me, and now, one way or another, I have to beat all of them. From Software / Sony / whoever is in charge of bringing PlayStation titles to PC still has not brought Bloodborne over to PC, and even though I'm writing and recording this video well in advance, I am fairly confident that by the time this airs that will not have changed at all, which is really sad because I very much would like to play this game at 60 FPS without having to buy a stupid ass PS5 for $7 billion. And what's really funny about this fan-made demake is that it might technically be the closest thing we have to a PC version of Bloodborne, so obviously I have to play it because if I didn't, then I'd be lying about wanting that exact thing 2 seconds ago. Unfortunately, I could not find a way to get any of my controllers to work properly with this game. The game would allow me to press start to get to the main menu and then never work again afterwards, which is kinda hilarious because I recently started Dark Souls 2, which had the exact opposite problem where the keyboard controls were outlandishly busted, and the game only lets you change inputs from a list of predetermined inputs that From Software wants you to use, which pretty much forces you to use a controller. You might wonder why I would ever want to play a Souls game on a keyboard, and the answer is pretty simple. Because. I beat both Dark Souls 1 and Elden Ring on a mouse and keyboard, so I really don't think it's that out of line, but maybe that's just because I'm a real gamer who doesn't need a controller. Then again, some people are beating these games with a DDR dance pad, so what do I know? But anyways, the keyboard controls take some time to get used to in this demake, but they're surprisingly serviceable, although there is this weird thing where the arrow keys are the attack and the camera buttons, but when you're navigating the upgrades menu, they go up and down, but while you're doing that, your character starts attacking nothing, which is weird, but also kind of funny. It might get fixed in a future update, but I guess we'll see. Now, when I first heard about this game, I was expecting a very quaint little thing that I would play for 10 minutes and go, ooh, neat, and then desperately look for things to talk about. What I got instead was insanely mind-blowing. This is way beyond your regular demake. This is legitimately very close to what Bloodborne actually is if it was on PS1. I saw a YouTube comment written somewhere on YouTube that said it's as though this was an actual game that came out in the 90s and the real Bloodborne on the PS4 was a 2015 remake of it. And I have to say, that is the perfect description. It is absolutely stunning how accurate everything is to the actual game within the hypothetical confines of PS1 hardware. Of course, it is worth noting that the development of this game is ongoing, so only the first handful of areas are completed thus far, but it's extremely promising just looking at how much there is. The opening cutscenes have been recreated, there's a custom character creator with a surprising variety of options, there's voice acting and dialogue that's extremely bit crunched. There is already a variety of enemies, items, weapons, and locale. Graphically, the game does quite a lot to look authentic to the PS1 visuals that it's attempting to emulate. Dithering, texture warping, wobbly vertices, it's all there and it's beautiful. Not that I'd want Rayman 2 to look like that or anything, but I also never get tired of these low quality bit crunch sound effects and voice lines as a bunch of guys mob you and say shit like, "Oh yeah, you think you're a Bloodborne, you plague-ridden wanker? You think you're Dark Souls? You think you're Elden Ring? You think you're Sekiro? You're not even Demon Souls. You're Armored Core. You're Metal Wolf Chaos." They even have that PS1 synth effect for the music instead of having all the pre-recorded CD music. There is a huge elaborate array of screen effects that you can modify as you like, all in the name of recreating that old CRT look as though you were 10 years old playing the game in your mom's basement with 3 different cans of Pepsi and a half-eaten Pizza Hut pizza. But if you're not a fan of all that stuff, you can just get KFC instead, and you also have the option of turning all that stuff on and off. The one thing I would recommend turning off is the load times. The game added these artificially long loading screens to be more authentic to an actual PS1. This is funny the first 3 times, but also gets in the way of actually enjoying the game, and for this reason I am very thankful that you can disable it. Apart from being authentic, it also illustrates just how far we've come in technology. In the actual Bloodborne, the world is largely seamless, with load times only really being present when you fast travel. It's not so easy to pull that off on a PS1. As for whether or not the PlayStation can actually run the game you're looking at here, without being an expert, I think that some version of it could exist in theory, but it is worth noting that this is not a PlayStation ROM, but rather a standalone exe file that runs on the PC. It would probably be one of the better looking games on the system if it did manage to make it that far. And before you say no, that's impossible, it can't be done, always remember, they ported the entirety of Resident Evil 2, which came on 2 700MB PS1 discs, onto a single 64MB Nintendo 64 cartridge, and it is fully feature complete and everything. By all accounts, that should have been impossible, but they did it. Gameplay-wise, it's obviously not quite on par with the actual game, which is to be expected, but I was very surprised at how close it often got. When push comes to shove, you are actually playing this like a Souls game, studying attack patterns, dodging at the right moment, managing your stamina, spacing, timing, all under the threat of getting stabbed into oblivion at a moment's notice. It even has fully fledged boss fights and side quests. Seriously, this is a legitimate thing. There are some very notable differences, perhaps the biggest one being that the levels are very segmented by artificial loading screens to give it that extra layer of authenticity. When you leave an area and come back, all the enemies you killed reappear, unlike the original game, but on the bright side, it makes soul farming a lot easier. Not that I would ever do that because I'm a real gamer. I beat every Dark Souls, except for most of them. Within the hypothetical constraints of the PlayStation hardware, this Bloodborne remake is insanely authentic. Maybe a little too authentic. I was expecting this game to be little more than a cute demo that you play for 3 seconds, but in its current state, Bloodborne PSX is an actual game. There's a good few hours of content in here that is definitely worth checking out. I actually learned things by playing this version that I didn't already know from the original, so this game might have actually taught me something I can use when I finally circle back to it. I can't wait to do that. And just like that, my backlog grew another 1.5 feet. Today's video was all about a Souls game, but for tomorrow's video, Souls carries an entirely different meaning. I'll see you there. Merry summer, y'all.